Hello, this is Kings. Welcome to our lesson for today. Okay. On today's lesson, actually, I'm doing this particular lesson at the request of some of my students who said I should do something for them in biology. So let's ride on. So today we shall be talking about diabetes mellitus. Diabetes mellitus. Actually, locally, we used to call it type 1 diabetes. So diabetes mellitus is the type 1 diabetes. So what is the cause? What are the consequences? And what are the symptoms? That's what we are going to look today. The cause, the consequences, and the symptoms. So this diabetes mellitus is actually an autoimmune disease, a disorder in carbohydrate metabolism. So for us to understand this, we need to know about the pancreas and how it functions. So we will start on the pancreas. Normally, the pancreas is being referred to as a double gland. A double gland. Why a double gland? Because it functions both as an exocrine gland, that's with the digestive system, and also function as an endocrine gland, that is with the endocrine system. So, as an exocrine gland, which functions with the digestive system, it secretes pancreatic juice, which contains enzymes, okay, through the pancreatic duct into the first part of the small intestine called the duodenum. So it secretes enzymes. So the second function is the endocrine function of the pancreas, endocrine gland. It functions with the endocrine system. So it secretes hormones directly into the blood. Okay? So for us to understand much or how or the cause and consequences of diabetes mellitus, we need to know how does the pancreas function as an endocrine gland. So we need to know the endocrine functions of the pancreas. So the endocrine functions of the pancreas. Now, this pancreas, first of all, where is it located? It is located in the abdomen, behind the stomach, at the left end, upper left end of the abdomen. Okay? It lies horizontally across the abdomen. It's just like the shape of your palm. Okay? So, scattered amongst the follicles of the pancreatic cells, you have clusters of granular tissues. We call them the islets of Langerhans. So, inside these islets of Langerhans, we have two sets of cells. We have the beta cells and we have the alpha cells. So, what is the function of the pancreatic beta cells? The beta cells of the pancreas secretes a hormone called insulin. When does this secretion happen? It happens when there is a rise in glucose level of the blood. So when there is a rise in the glucose level, especially when you just have a meal, when you just ate starchy food, or we call it carbohydrate, there is going to be a rise in your glucose level. So when there is that rise in your glucose level, it is going to stimulate the beta cells to secrete insulin into the blood. Okay? So that is how the beta cells functions. And then the alpha cells of the pancreas, how do they function? They secrete glucagon into the blood. When does this alpha cells secrete glucagon? They secrete glucagon when there is a drop in the glucose level of the blood. That is when somebody is hungry. Okay, so now you have the insulin inside the blood and you have the glucagon in the blood. What is the function of the insulin in the blood? So once the beta cells releases insulin into the blood, insulin converts glucose to glycogen and sends them to the body's reservoir. That is the liver or the skeletal muscles. Okay, and insulin again converts glucose to energy to supply the cells. So this insulin has two vital functions. It maintains the blood sugar level. Remember, when I talk of insulin or when I talk of glucose and I talk of sugar, they are the same thing. So don't get confused. Glucose is still the same like sugar. So don't get confused. So insulin converts glucose to glycogen. When there is too much glucose in the blood, insulin converts the glucose and keeps up in the storage region in the liver for further use. So this process whereby insulin converts glucose to glycogen and sent to the liver is called glycogenesis. Glycogenesis. Okay. Likewise, when the cells, body cells are starving, they need energy. Insulin converts some of the glucose for energy and supplies the body cells. This process is called glycolysis. That is the conversion of glucose to energy by insulin to supply the body cells. Glycolysis. So that is how insulin functions. Now, glucagon. Glucagon functions or is being released into the blood when the glucose level drops. When does the glucose level drops in the blood? When you are hungry. When somebody is hungry, the glucose level of the blood drops. So glucagon goes now to the storage region, the liver, takes the glycogen, converts it to glucose, and sends it to the bloodstream. And then insulin takes the glucose now from the bloodstream, converts it to energy, and supply the cells. So this process whereby glucagon converts glycogen to glucose and sends it to the bloodstream is called glycogenolysis. Glycogenolysis. Let me make a rundown again on these endocrine functions of the pancreas. Okay, I said scattered amongst the follicles of the pancreatic cells, you have clusters of granular tissues. We call them the islets of Langerhans. Islets of Langerhans. So inside these islets of Langerhans, we have two sets of cells. We have the beta cells and we have the alpha cells. So what is the function of the beta cells? The beta cells secrete insulin into the blood. And then the alpha cells secretes glucagon into the blood. So the insulin secreted by the beta cells into the bloodstream, how does insulin functions in the blood? Insulin controls the blood glucose level. Remember, when I say glucose and I say sugar, is the same thing. So insulin controls the blood glucose level. How? When there is too much or a rise in the glucose level of the blood, insulin converts the glucose to glycogen and sends them to the storage region, like the liver. This process is what we call glycogenesis, the conversion of glucose to glycogen for storage by the insulin. Okay, the same insulin also converts this glucose in the blood to energy and supplies the body cells. So this process whereby insulin converts glucose to energy for the body cells is called glycolysis. Now, that is the function of insulin. Now, we have the beta cells which secretes glucagon. What is the function of glucagon in the blood? Glucagon functions to convert glycogen from the liver, the storage region, converts it now to glucose and sends it to the blood system. When does glucagon convert glycogen to glucose? That is when there is a drop in the glucose level of the blood. Okay? So the process whereby glucagon converts glycogen from the storage region to glucose and supplies the blood, that process is called glycogenolysis. Okay? So now, what happens now? Let's go a bit further. Let me take you to the white blood cells. The white blood cells are the body's defense mechanism. The white blood cells is there to defend our body system. So the immune system, the defense system of our body is provided by the white blood cells. So the white blood cells, we can also call them leukocyte or leukocyte. Okay, it is the body's immune system. Immune system means the defense system. It's to defend the body. So there comes a situation where the T cells found in the immune system turns around and attack the beta cells of the pancreas, which means the T cells from the immune system turns around and attack the beta cells as if the beta cells were invaders. It's just like somebody has a bodyguard and the bodyguard turns around and attacks his boss. That's abnormal. What causes this abnormality for this attack is what we are going to study next. So when the T cells attacks the beta cells of the pancreas, it just precipitates what we call diabetes mellitus, T1D, type 1 diabetes. That is the cause. So you know, the beta cells, as I told you, is responsible for the production of insulin. So once they are being attacked and destroyed by the T cells from the immune system, it means there won't be any insulin in the bloodstream. And once there is no insulin in the bloodstream, it means the blood glucose level is out of control. So what is the cause of diabetes mellitus, type 1 diabetes? What is the cause? The cause is the destruction of the pancreatic beta cells. The destruction of the pancreatic beta cells by the T cells from the immune system. That is the cause of diabetes mellitus, type 1 diabetes. Okay, what are the consequences? Once these cells are being destroyed, what are now the consequences as a result of this cause? What are the consequences? The consequences are that the blood now will be deficiency of insulin. Insulin deficiency in the blood. And once insulin is deficient in the blood, you already know the functions of insulin. Every other thing about glucose is grounded. Number 2 consequences, the blood glucose is out of control. Yes, no control. And then you have, when there is no control of your blood glucose level, you will have too much glucose in your blood. Too much glucose. Why? Because most of the food we eat in our daily life contains starch, or what we call carbohydrate. And the end product of carbohydrate digestion is insulin or sugar, which is being converted for energy to the blood cells. Okay, so you have too much of glucose in your blood, and then that individual, that patient will generally lose weight, and then the person will be physically weak. Okay, so now what are the symptoms when all this happens? What are the symptoms? A patient suffering from type 1 diabetes, or we call diabetes mellitus, will have an excessive thirst for water all the time. Why? Because water is needed into your blood system to dilute the glucose that is in your blood. So that patient will have excessive thirst. Number 2, that patient will have too much of glucose released in his or her urine. You have too much of glucose in his or her urine. And when there's too much glucose in your urine, it means your urine will taste sweet. You have a sweet taste. And then that particular patient will be frequently going to pass out urine. Frequent urination will be occurring. And then finally, when the person passes out urine on the ground, you will see ants who come to feast on your urine. Urine contains urea, which is acidic. It repels most of these small insects. But once you pass out urine, it instead attracts ants to come and feast on. It means there is sugar in that urine. That's another symptom for a patient who suffers from diabetes. Okay, I hope you got it. Thank you. Goodbye.